we spent the weekend, as I've said, diving into everybody. And we were on a call, me, you, Nick, talking about, okay, what about this guy? I don't know about this guy. This might be a fall. Let's put him here. Can we put guys in two different spots? Yeah, probably. It was a lot of debate. And I think that's the best part about this is we came to a conclusion with 3 categories for each round. The first, the second, and the third round of the if they're there guys. These guys will not be passed up by the Pittsburgh Steelers. If they are available at 20, they are the first round pick for Pittsburgh. And then this is the big board. This is who the Steelers are hoping fall to them at pick number 20, pick number 51, pick number 84, pick number 98. And then the fallback options. Okay, these guys are there. You could add them right now, or you could consider kind of moving back and seeing if they're there in a couple of picks, kind of boosting your amount of picks that you have in the NFL draft. And I think those 3 categories allow us to do a lot of things and allow us to envision the Steelers draft in a deeper sense. And at this point, where we are a week from, or less than a week, 4 days from round 1, I think it's a good place to be. So let's start with round 1, pick 20. If they're there, if this is they cannot pass them up. If they are on the board, we fully believe that there is no chance the Steelers will avoid these guys and potentially think about trading up to go and get them, depending on how close they get to pick number 20. Those names: Quinion Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo, a name that we have talked about vigorously on this show about how much the Steelers love him. Talise Fuaga, offensive tackle out of Oregon State. Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington, that as early as or as late as over the weekend, Mina Kimes says the Steelers might be a name to watch if he falls out of the top 10. Cornerback out of Alabama, Terrion Arnold, a sleeper, I think. A guy that the Steelers love, that Ike Taylor has raved about, that should be pretty high on the Steelers draft board. And then maybe my personal favorite, a guy that people are talking about maybe being the first defensive lineman out of the first round at this point, which is a huge climb compared to possibly falling to the Steelers like last Thursday. Byron Murphy, defensive tackle out of Texas. You look at that list, you see those names: Quinion Mitchell, Talise Fuaga, Rome Odunze, Terrion Arnold, and Byron Murphy. What are your thoughts, my friend? You helped develop it, so let's talk about it.
My thoughts is that, man, Rome Odunze would be fun, Like, that's the thing. It's just all these guys would just be so much fun. And,
Yes.
Like, I went with Barton just because I felt like it was the smartest, most prudent.
Yeah.
Like, you're not, I don't know, it would be a big reach to go anywhere other than center. But, like, you look at this list of names and you're like, man, like Quinion Mitchell and Joey Porter, that'd be awesome.
Oh,
Quinion Mitchell, or, Joey Porter and Terrion Arnold, that'd be awesome. George Pickens and Odunze, like, they would just be so much fun here. But I think the better thing for me is that none of these guys are really going to fall to them. So I don't have to like tie myself in the knots thinking about, man, is it too much to reach for this guy? Is it too much? I still think center is always going to be the smartest option for them, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in seeing Rome Odunze and George Pickens pair up together.
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody on this list is you really consider it if they're sitting there at 15. Like at some point, these are, Graham Barton's great. Yeah, Armarius Mims is good. Yeah, Troy Fatanu is awesome. Like, you could talk yourself into all those guys and feel really comfortable with all of them. This list is if they're there close enough, like, they're a game changer. You might have just landed potentially the best player in the draft. Like, that's how good every single one of these guys could be, that they're really up there. Let me ask, who do you think's the most realistic to fall to them? And who do you think is the most realistic that they would consider a trade up for?
That's interesting because I don't know. I feel like Murphy is the one most likely to fall to them. Like you said, he's had such a fluctuating, draft position, and as we've seen over this draft season. So I feel like he's the one most likely to fall out of that, kind of top 15 or top 10, whatever range he's in right now. With that said, I feel like it's either Fuaga or Mitchell, the most likely ones that they would trade up for. And I'm tempted to say Mitchell, just because at corner, like the drop off between Mitchell and a Nate Wiggins, someone who's actually going to be in that range that the Steelers could pick in. I think is so drastic. Whereas with Fuaga, like, you might be able to get a Troy Fatanu or a JC Latham at 20.
Yep.
You don't necessarily need to reach for a top 15 pick, or you don't need to reach for the fourth tackle in this draft, when the gap between them and the fifth or the sixth one or the seventh one is not nearly as big as it is with the corners. So
Yeah.
that's why I think Mitchell is the one that they'd most likely be willing to reach up for.
I think depending on Quinion Mitchell and where he falls, I agree with that 100%. I'm like almost convinced that, like, remember when Devin Witherspoon last year, like at one point was considered like a mid first round pick, and then the last like week of the draft, it was like, now this guy might go like top 5, and then he goes 6, and you're like, yeah, doesn't surprise me. I think Quinion Mitchell might be in that like category, like where the first team that needs a defensive player is just going to be like, yep, nope, we're going Quinion Mitchell, 0 questions asked, and he turns into a top 10 pick. Like, I really think that that's an option for him. If he falls to anywhere near 15, 14, 13 might be pushing it, but he may be. I think the Steelers are at least making phone calls to see how far up they can move. When it comes to the most realistic to fall to them, if you asked me 24 hours ago, I would believe you with Byron Murphy. Now, I mean, even Schefter's saying like the guy might be the first pick in the draft, or the first defensive player in the draft. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to go off of the most recent reports, and the most recent reports say that my hopes and dreams went out the window 24 hours ago. If only we recorded this a day early. So I'm going to go most likely to fall to them might be Terrion Arnold. And I still don't feel confident in that, but I might say Terrion Arnold, just depending on, kind of how the corners fall in this draft. And maybe guys are just like, yeah, we're just going to, if Cooper DeJean, let's say that, I think a team could go Cooper DeJean over Terrion Arnold, leaving the door open for the Pittsburgh Steelers to land Arnold at pick number 20. Name to watch to trade up for. Quinion Mitchell's my favorite, but I think Fuaga and Odunze, real options there. I think Odunze is a sleeper if he makes it to 15.
Odunze is great. Like, I don't know. Like, he seems like more like top 10, than.
Oh, I think he might be the best wide receiver outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he might be the second best wide receiver in the draft, and a draft that the top 3 wide receivers
are incredible.
Yeah, like they might all turn out to be the top 3 wide receivers in the NFL in 2 years. Like, they might just be that good. I agree with you. I just don't know. I don't know where they're going to go. Like, I don't know how many teams are looking for a wide receiver that early, especially with how stacked all of these positions are, that I think the top half of the draft is so loaded that it's tough. So I think if he goes to 15, I just think at least Omar's going to call and be like, hey, Indy, I don't know who has the 15th pick. I think it's the Saints.
Yeah, it's either the Saints or I want to say the Raiders, maybe. I can't. Yeah,
maybe the Raiders. But it's one of those, and I think Omar's on the phone just saying like, hey, let's see what could happen.
That's just like trading up, more than 5 spots for a receiver is just, I know, something that like Omar Khan would get killed for it. Just like draft Twitter and everything. Like, no, I don't think anyone would feel so, like, people would either love it or they would think it's the stupidest thing anyone's ever done in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. But depending on, could you imagine if he pulls off of like, hey, here's a 4th round pick, we're just moving up 5 spots. And I think like of all the GMs, the con artist might be able to get it done. And then at that point, it's like, whatever.
Yeah, and if you like tell the Saints or whatever, I think the Saints like are looking at tackles and offensive linemen. If you say, don't worry, we're not taking your guy.
Yeah,
your guy's still going to be there. Just let me slide in and grab this receiver right here. It doesn't make any difference to you.
That's what I'm saying. And then he's there. And then boom, Rome Odunze. Oh my gosh, Rome Odunze and George Pickens would be crazy, absolutely crazy. All right, let's talk realistic pick for the big board. Pick number 20. Our list includes a lot of offensive linemen. Troy Fatanu out of Washington, J.C. Latham, offensive tackle out of Alabama, a name that is heating up as we get closer. Our personal favorite, Graham Barton, center out of Duke. Cooper DeJean, cornerback, or I guess defensive back out of Iowa, and then center out of Oregon. Jackson Powers Johnson. I think there's an overall consensus here that the Pittsburgh Steelers most likely are going to take an offensive lineman with pick number 20.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you're not going to go center, then you almost have to go offensive tackle. I mean, there are just too many holes on this offensive line. This offensive line has been kind of I don't want to say middling, but there's just clearly, the talent level has been lacking a little bit for a while, and there are just still too many holes for them to not fill somehow.
Yep.
Whether it's with the tackle or it's with the center. That's why we have so many names listed at those positions. I'm partial to center. I just don't think like there's a viable center option on this roster, but I can't tell you that I'd be upset with Fatanu or Latham, to be quite honest with you. DeJean is kind of fallen off of my board. I think I like as far as 20th. I like not because he's bad or not because I have any different kind of evaluation of him. It's just I don't know if they can afford to pick a corner at this spot.
Yeah, I would love Cooper DeJean. I think Cooper DeJean is a game changer, but I think that I somewhat agree with you that if you don't make a move up in the second round, and maybe that's their thought, I would say if they select a corner, there's a game plan to make a move in the second round. That most likely they're saying we're not sticking around at 51, that we're going to move up. And I think DeJean may be it, but I think that if all these names are there at 20, DeJean is probably last on that list depending on how you look at, and we would imagine Barton sits over Jackson Powers Johnson on their big board, but I would say DeJean is probably last on that list. And I mean, I think we both have the same answer here, but most realistic option, probably Graham Barton.
Yeah, definitely. Like probably most realistic. Like Fatanu and Latham both seem like they're going to go before him. Powers Johnson seems like a bit of a reach, and same for DeJean. So
yeah,
leaves us with one guy.
One guy, Graham Barton, former offensive tackle, short arms, playing center in the NFL. Love it. And then the fallback options. These guys might be here at 20, and maybe you feel comfortable taking them at 20. Maybe you feel comfortable enough that you're saying, all right, let's move back a couple of spots, make a trade, add some draft value later in the NFL draft, and grab one of these guys. These are some interesting names as well. Texas wide receiver Adonai Mitchell, Georgia offensive tackle Armarius Mims, Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, Nate Wiggins, another cornerback out of Clemson, and a sleeper, I think, a big name to watch, most certainly, Ladd McConkey, wide receiver out of Georgia. Steven, who's your favorite on this list? Who is a guy that if you were the Steelers, you wouldn't even think about moving back? You're saying, hey, I might feel comfortable enough picking him at 20.
Yeah, I think it's Adonai Mitchell, to be quite honest with you. I do love me some Ladd McConkey. It was fun watching some of his highlights and reading into him a little bit over the weekend. But Mitchell just has a kind of speed and athleticism, and he has this huge frame that I feel like the Steelers would absolutely love. I feel like he's got the higher ceiling than McConkey, even if McConkey might, probably be ready to contribute right away. I think a little bit sooner. And then just I don't know, both those tackles just seem like crapshoots. Like I have no idea what they're gonna bring, and I've cooled very much on Nate Wiggins since earlier in the draft season. The size does concern me a little bit and the weight. So I'd say AD Mitchell out of all those three. I think it's just also interesting because these guys are like you kind of alluded to, like these are trade back options as well.
Yeah.
Like if they end up trading back, these are the guys who would be kind of your 24th, 27th, 28th pick kind of big board guys, I think.
Yeah. So my name to watch would be Armarius Mims, but I think that where the Steelers sit, whereas if they trade back and he's still there, I think that's a realistic option. And I think maybe he's realistic at 20, but I kind of look at it like they have not taken chances in this NFL offseason. They have looked at this and said, we're going to win a Super Bowl and we're going to hunt for a Super Bowl and we're going to make all the moves that are necessary to put ourselves in position to win a Super Bowl. And I mean, Mims is a guy he's a question mark. He could turn into something great, and maybe you get a incredible pick with pick number 20, a guy that should have went well beforehand. But maybe you get a guy that only played 8 games in college and just can't stay healthy and has some issues, and because of that, he doesn't turn out to be anything crazy, and you wasted your first-round pick on an offensive tackle. I think if I'm sitting at 25, I feel a lot better about Armarius Mims than I do at 20. If they're sitting there at 20 and all of everybody else is gone except for these 5 names, I agree with you. I think Mitchell's the guy. I think maybe they'd consider McConkey, but I would say Mitchell's the name that the Steelers would say, look, we want a guy who's going to work out in the NFL, and this guy's going to work out in the NFL. There are no questions asked. We'll figure the rest out later. and I would see him being an actual option at 20 if all of the rest of the names are gone. But I would agree with you. I think Mitchell's the name that stands out the most on this list. Mims is the name that if you fall back, that's an option. I think Guyton's on that list too. I don't know how much. I mean, they brought him in for a visit. I think they're just kind of doing their due diligence. I don't see Guyton as like a real, this is definitely going to happen for the Steelers, especially at pick number 20.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like much of anyone is very excited, terribly excited about Guyton. Like, not even,
No.
doesn't even seem like the people who are within range to take him like at the way end of that first round seem super thrilled that that's the tackle that's going to fall to him.
Yeah, I agree.